Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about angles. In our last lesson we talked about what a point was, what a line was, what a line segment was, and what a ray was. Those are like your building blocks of geometry. So we're going to talk about angles, how we can use those building blocks to look at something that's really important in geometry. So an angle, and you can use that slideshow presentation that's been shared with this video to go along as I go along. Feel free to pause as you go. So the first slide, it says an angle. An angle is the amount of turn or rotation from one ray to another ray that share a common point. And the common point they share would be their endpoints. So what all that means is, let's say you have two rays, because that's what an angle is going to be made up of. You have one ray here, we'll call it ray AB, and let's say you have this ray right here, we'll call it ray AC. The common point that they share is this point right here. So two rays that share a common point, that's the vertex. So the vertex, the end point of each ray is what they share, and it's measuring the amount of turn you have. So what that means is, if you were rotating like around A was like your center, it's how much did you turn from this ray to get to this ray. So how much have you turned? That's what the angle is measuring. And we measure angle in degrees, so they're measured in degrees. And we use this little symbol right here. So if this angle was, let's say, 50 degrees, we would say it's 50. Little degree symbol up here. And again, you're measuring like the rotation. How do you get from one ray to the next? It's the amount of turn from one, but that shared vertex is the shared point they have between one another. Now with angles, they could be made by two rays. That's really what an angle is, but they could be formed by other relationships as well. For example, you could have, let's say, two lines intersect. And where two lines intersect, you're going to have the vertex of actually 4 different angles here. But each one of these would be an angle, and you're just measuring how much turn from one ray to the next. So the angle right here is measuring this angle. This angle right here, you're measuring the amount of turn from this ray down to this ray. So you're seeing how much you've rotated. And again, we measure them in degrees. You also could have segments that intersect or even share an endpoint. So you could have two segments, and let's say they intersect. It would be kind of like the two lines intersecting. There's going to be 4 angles there, and you're measuring that amount of turn. And you could have different combinations of rays and lines intersecting with each other. It's where they have that common point that you're going to have a vertex. So with angles, it's really important to know how to notate angles. So let's take all this away, because we want to know that we're talking about an angle, and we want to know which angle we're talking about. So let's say we take this nice angle here. So to notate that we're talking about an angle, we're going to use this symbol, which signifies that we're talking about an angle. And when you're naming an angle, you're going to list 3 points of the angle. There's a couple ways to think about it. You're always going to list the vertex in the middle. So we're going to go A in the middle, and then a point on each side on either side. A nice way to think about it is, if you were to trace the angle, you'd go from C to A to B. So you can call it angle CAB. You also can think of it like going from B to A to C. You could also name this angle BAC. I like to think of how you're tracing the angle. The vertex is going to be in the middle though, because this is the angle we're talking about. So these are 2 good, fine ways to name this angle. Some other ways that you might see, if there's a diagram with a lot of angles, you might see a little number in here. You can call it angle 1 then. Be careful when this happens. This is not the degree measurement, it's just angle 1. If it was the degree measurement, you would see a degree symbol up here. So it's just naming the angle. And you also could name this as angle A, but that's specific to this one. there's only one angle that's formed at A here, so we can call it angle A. If there was more than one, then this wouldn't be a great way to name the angle because we don't know which way we're talking about. So using this notation would be much better and easier to not make a mistake with. So that's the basic idea of what an angle is. We're going to just name a couple angles here and make sure we're okay with them. So go on to slide 2 if you're following along on the slides. I'll draw the diagram. The diagram, let's get rid of this, looks like this on slide 2. And it just says we want to name each angle. There's a lot of angles we can name here. We're only going to name 4 of them. Here's our points, B, angle E, and angle D, or point D, sorry. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're only going to name 4 angles here. We could name more than that actually, but we're going to name this angle here in green, measuring the turn from one ray to the next, and we'll color code. We'll then measure angle, or the blue angle here, and we'll do a red one over here, and then we're going to have this nice maroonish red down here. So we'll name these angles here, and this angle goes all the way through, kind of cuts off our B. So let's start with the green. So we're going to use the symbol for angle, so the angle symbol, and we're going from A, this is point B, so A to B to C, so we can call it angle ABC. Or we can call it, if we traced it the other way, CBA, angle CBA. And that's measuring the amount of turn from one ray to the other. Note that the vertex is in the middle for both the ways we named it. The vertex should always be in the middle. Alright, let's do the blue angle next. So the blue angle, use our angle symbol. If you trace it, you can go CBE, so angle CBE. That would be perfectly fine. Or you could also say angle EBC, going from E to B to C. Important things again, make sure the vertex is in the middle, and make sure you're using the angle notation so we know we're talking about the angles. If you want to try the next 2 on your own, you can go ahead and pause, try it on your own. I'm going to continue through, so then you can check and see if you have the right answer. I'm going to do the red one next. So for the red one, you have angle, and we go ABD. Or you can call it angle DBA. DBA. That would be your 2 names for the red angle here. And lastly, we'll do this bottom one. Use our angle symbol, and we can either call it angle DBE, or we can call it angle EBD. And there we go. So there's our ways we can name the angles, a couple ways for each angle, but there they are color-coded with each angle in the diagram, and we'll stop at those 4 for this. Okay, so now we're going to move on to how to classify some angles. So we'll go on to your 3rd slide, see how we're feeling. So the 3rd slide says there's types of angles, and we're going to talk about 4 main types of angles. So our first type of angle it says a right angle. We'll use notation for this. So a right angle, you may know this from the past, a right angle is special. It has a measurement of exactly 90 degrees. They look like this. And in a diagram, to signify that we have a right angle, we use this special notation, a little box, to signify we have a right angle. So right angles, they all measure 90 degrees. Every right angle has the same measurement. Let's go on to an acute angle. So an acute angle, you may have seen in the past, an acute angle is special. It has a measurement that is less than 90 degrees. So the measurement is less than 90 degrees. So it looks kind of like a right angle, except it's less turn. So it's going to look like this. So we don't quite get to that full 90 degrees. It can be anywhere between, well, it has to be greater than 0, but 0 to 89.9 infinitely just cannot equal 90, so anything less than 90. And there's your acute angle. And obtuse angle is up next. So obtuse. An obtuse angle, it has a measurement that is more than or greater than 90 degrees. So instead of being the right, now you've gone more than the 90-degree turn. So you've gone more than the 90 degrees. This would be your angle. So more than 90, but we also have another restriction to be obtuse. You have to be less than 180 degrees. It's another restriction. And that leads us to our last angle that we'll talk about, called a straight angle. And a straight angle is going to be an angle that, well, when you have both rays, they form a straight line. We call these opposite rays, actually. And they make a 100-degree angle between them. So they measure exactly 180 degrees. So in order from greatest, or we'll go least to greatest, acute, then you go right, then obtuse, and then straight would be the next. So there's our 4 ways to classify angles as one of these 4. Those are the ones we'll stick with.